Tell me, how the hell did you end up in Fleet?
How did I end up in Fleet?
Yeah.
Well, I ended up in Fleet because when I was in the Air Force, I was posted to Odium. And initially lived in quarters in Odium, but when I was coming up towards the end of my time there, we looked around for a house. And we bought our first house in Church Crookham. Little 3-bedroom house. And then we looked around a couple of years later and found this place. And we've stayed here ever since.
So when was that? When did you move in?
Oh, gosh. Probably 1990-ish.
Okay.
Yeah. It's, when you look back, it's quite a long time ago. But we like this house. We never wanted to move. And of course, the beauty of the pond just down the way, the countryside. I love nature. And so I've never wanted to move. Right, well, about 10, 11 years ago, 3 old retirees in this area met up and wanted to get together around the pond. We were communing with nature, putting the world to rights, sitting on logs beside the pond, and in general, having a pleasant time. One of us decided that this was very much after the same lines as Last the Summer Wine, a television series, and the name stuck. And so we've become Last of the Summer Wine ever since. And the 3 original members, me, Nick and Jeff, became Compo, Foggy and Clegg. We started doing the odd bit of clearing up of rubbish and cutting back the paths and such like, and we're gradually being joined by other people. And the team actually got bigger and bigger. One of the first was Mandy, who we called, much to her annoyance initially, Nora Batty, but she accepted it eventually. And then we had Colin came along as Howard. We had Michelle and other people, and we ended up with a team of about 7 or 8 people. So we started doing a little bit more. Now, I was interested in working, doing little projects around the pond, and it came about when, talking with Steve, the head ranger, we decided that we would really like a boat jetty so that we could launch the boat without having to tow it around by the road, since the trailer was not roadworthy. And so we set about building that. Now, with the gravel bed there, we had to sink holes to put the poles in. And Steve got hold of a powered auger, which we used to drive holes down and to put the poles in. Unfortunately, it took 2 of us to hold it, and it bit quite a bit as it went round. Such and shook him up so much so, shook us both up so much so, but he was obviously more susceptible, and he ended up being carted off to hospital next day to have his appendix out. It just so happens that when he was in hospital, in the next ward was his wife giving birth to their first child. I asked whether they actually moved the beds in together, but they didn't. That was it. After having completed the boat jetty, we looked around for another project, and it just so happened that the old Carnival Bridge at the far side of the pond was too narrow to take scooters and was beginning to corrode. This was removed and replaced by a new one, and we took the opportunity of grabbing the old bridge, and with the good work of Phil Gower, who had at that time a metalworking company in Farnborough, he took the bridge away, cut out all the rusty bits, welded in new pieces, and widened it. When this was delivered to us, we put it across the ditch at the bottom of Wood Lane to replace what had been just 2 railway sleepers. And then, having finished that, we carried on with a few more projects. We built a couple of more bridges down there, but the big one was when we were asked to put into the Flash a pond dipping platform for the children. This we did, and it was such a success that we had to build another one. And so we built a bigger one just round the corner. And it was in building this when I lost the first of my mobile phones because it fell out of my pocket. I did ring the number, but I didn't hear any answer. And that's it, that went. That was completed, and a couple more bridges came. One in particular was one at the bottom of Kenilworth Road, where we put in a bridge which we dedicated to Colin and Mavis on the occasion of their 60th wedding anniversary. And I had to get them and drive them around without them knowing why. That was good. That went well. But our most ambitious project was the Lion's View. There was a need, we felt, and everybody else felt as well, to have a platform overlooking the reeds round the corner, where you could get up to it, sit there, look over the reeds, watch the birds and see the islands. I did a little bit of examining on the rules governing mobility and disability, because we wanted to make it able for disabled people and for mobility scooters to get up there. And we ended up having to have a slope which was no more than 5 degrees with no more than 10 metres of slope without a platform in between, a rest spot. This we did, and it was a great success. And in fact, when we opened it, I should mention that the money for this came from Fleet Lions, which was very generous, gave us the money to do it. And when we finished it, Fleet Lions came to open it, and as to prove its worth, we got 35 people plus a mobility scooter up on the platform to show that it was strong enough. And that was it. We've then settled back to doing conservation work by cutting down reeds, chopping trees, clearing up various bits all the way around the pond, and we're open for business still.
So, this conservation work, give me an example. What sort of stuff would you be clearing away?
Well, thinning out trees, removing saplings and particularly the non-indigenous species, and pulling up everything and chopping everything down that needed it to make it restore it, if possible, back to what a site of special scientific interest should be. And so we worked in Woodland Heath, we worked in Fuglemere and down the ponds, etc. And we still do it, well, we would do it today if we could, but we're a bit stuck at the moment.
So tell me, the photos of the conservation work look as if you were having a pretty good time. Would it be fair to say that fires played a particularly important part of this activity?
We weren't having a good time. We were hard working, but yes, I mean, we had to get rid of the rubbish, so we had to burn them. And then we just took the opportunity, whilst we were burning them, to put a few potatoes in there and have baked potatoes at lunchtime. And it worked well. And in fact, on those days, we got more people come along than normal. And I did once try baked apples, but I left them in for too long. So we had apple puree.
But the troops didn't revolt.
No, they just needed more spoons.
Do you have any particular favourite species in terms of the wildlife that you're helping to protect down at the pond?
No particular species. I like birds, bird life in particular, and there is a considerable amount of down there. We have herons, we have all sorts of things in the pond and around the pond. Swans in flight I think are lovely, and the sound they make as they go across the water is a joy. I've seen foxes, I've seen deer. I haven't seen any badgers down there. They come into my garden instead.
It seems that Canada geese are resident down at the pond as well for all the time.
Very much so. Yes, they are a large number. They did some dredging, and with all the stuff they were dredging up, the most expensive part of that would have been to transport it away. And they put them down as islands around the pond. And we took one of these islands, Clearwater Island. Because the dredger was there, we got 70 tons of stones taken out to it. We spread it all over to turn it into a tern nesting area, because terns nest on stone. It worked well for a year, and then the ducks took over and the terns left. But it's still there, and they're still nesting, but very few terns.
And did Clearwater require any maintenance?
Should require maintenance, yes. I mean, an awful lot of stuff grows up in between the stones, and really, ideally, every year, that lot needs to be pulled up and burnt. We've done that several times, and in fact, it's time to do it again.
So, Terry, Fleet Pond, incredibly important historical site as well. Have you ever found any interesting artefacts while you've been carrying out your project work?
One particular one I feel I should mention is that when we were building the boat jetty, in the mud there was a pistol, a World War II Smith & Wesson 38. I checked it was not loaded, took it back to the depot, and we rang the police. 2 police constables turned up in a car, and when they saw it was a real gun, said they couldn't touch it because they weren't allowed to, and they had to send off for a weapons trained policeman. He took it away. I asked if we could have it back, but we've never heard anything. That was that. Other than that,
no safes?
Well, we have found a safe, a small, one in the pond, and of course a fair amount of rubbish which is dumped. Yeah, and in fact I do have one of these powerful magnets to go magnet fishing, just in case. But I haven't used it for a while because we haven't been out on the pond.
Yeah, excellent. Your activities have taken you beyond Fleet Pond. Tell me something about the work that you did over at Elvertham, at the school. How did that come about?
Elvertham. Now that came about because Sharon Weald, the local councillor, is a sponsor of the school, and she thought that their pond that they had was overgrown and not fit for purpose, and asked us if we could do anything. So we went over there and thought yes, and we did.
What was that? What did you do?
Well, we cleared the pond out, and in fact the pond was made up of 2 parts, a muddy flat piece and then the pond proper. But Sharon decided he wanted it the other way around, so we had to move everything around. Then we built a walkway inside the fence so that people could actually go into it. And the kids, if need be, could actually do some pond dipping in there. From the time that I have started working round the pond, to me, one of the most important is to work with the rangers and not to work against their plans. Consequently, they draw up plans of action for the year. Within those plans, we can identify those tasks which can be taken on by last of the summer wine, and which tasks, because of their complexity, have to be done by contractors. As a consequence, now, beginning of the week, we agree with Sam, who is the ranger for Fleet Pond, what tasks we're going to do on the Friday, and what tasks we have to leave for something else. One particular ranger I do remember who had a most amusing time, I think, with us was Rachel, who left us to go to do a different job and has ended up being the head ranger at Horsell Nature Reserve near Woking. We've kept in touch, and we have actually been over there to give her a hand on one particular Friday, and I intend certainly to do it again. Nowadays, I walk around the pond and I have a great sense of satisfaction and indeed pride in that we got together, all with different skills, and we produced what we can see in the way of improvements. I realise that at the moment it is unfortunate because of the virus that we can't do it at the moment. It's all on hold. But we stand ready to leap back into action as soon as the virus is off.
How do you feel after a day of volunteering?
Quite tired, content with what we've done, looking forward to a nice hot shower and a drink.